there's a clause there. How much is that acting as a drag on the process, these changes of commerce that you describe?
Well, I'd be interested in getting others' opinion, and I think it's a big deal. I think that there are, I mean, I forgot the statistic that Al mentioned to me the other day, but there are a significant number of lobbyists. I believe there's 6 lobbyists for every person in the House and Senate, of which more or less 5.5 are anti-climate change lobbyists, and there's some folks lobbying on behalf of the environment. That is fundamentally insane.
Jim, do you feel you're putting your foot forward at Duke Energy? You personally, I've seen you for the last 3 or 4 years making waves on this. Do you feel you're almost going out too far and you're about to be sort of challenged both by your shareholders and also by those who represent your business?
Actually, I had a shareholder proposal this year that basically said I'm wasting corporate money by addressing the climate issue, interestingly enough.
And what happened to you?
Well, I talked him out of putting it on the proxy. And I don't think it convinced him. But a very important point here is, one of the things our company did is we stepped out of an organization called the National Association of Manufacturers, because they were taking a position on climate that, quite frankly, we couldn't support, and we voted with our feet and said, we're not going to support it. But let me answer your other question that I think every business person in this room must answer. We're going to have to fundamentally transform our business model in a low-carbon world, and each company is going to have to redefine it differently. And as a power supplier who serves over 11 million people, I think part of my mission, almost like a missionary, is to help my customers understand that they're going to have to redefine their business models as a consequence of addressing climate. And the details of climate are important, but the notion of getting on the road of redefining your business model to operate and make money in a low-carbon world, that is the challenge, and every business has to look inward and figure that out.
How much does that shareholder who tried to put that proxy motion through, how much does that represent a significant part of your shareholder power? How could you face challenges, multiple challenges like that?
Most of my challenges come from those who say I'm not doing enough. So it's, again, at the end of the day, it's a balance. But this it was sort of unique. This is the second year in a row that this shareholder group opposed us investing in anything or even wasting any resources on addressing this issue.
David?
What I'd like to add to Jim's comment, and this is something that has troubled me for the whole conference and before, is I don't understand why we as investors, and there's some of us in the room and many of us that sadly are not here, haven't figured out that investing in high carbon businesses, high carbon intensive businesses, are poor choices. They're bad economics, it's a bad investment decision. We have to do more to recognize that the high carbon economy, because we're going to a low carbon economy, is, as Al and the Secretary General talked about, these are subprime assets, these are toxic assets, and it's going to come home to roost. And to the extent that we can begin to recognize as investors that we are making mistakes from that perspective, I think that would be helpful. I think the Carbon Disclosure Project is a good idea. I think better disclosure in terms of carbon emissions is a good idea, and I think it will help us make better decisions.
Could I have the lights up a little more, because it's still quite difficult to see? Could I encourage any of you who want to intervene, particularly on David's point about changes of commerce and the drag chain that some of them are creating within businesses? I can see several hands, but let me go to Sam and Anders as well. Sam, yeah. Do you agree with David?
Well, I do in some respects, but also, I guess, as I listen to David, let's recognize that this is, and one of my favorite words, it's a bit of a journey. We're not going to convert high carbon businesses to low carbon businesses between now and 2012. We're not. What we have to do is create policy that takes us there so that Jim's customers, who are probably the loudest of his crowd, over time will adapt to a different model. And business has a better view of that in the long term. Some of the businesses have said to me, Give us a predictable, clear path, and we'll make the change. Give us a clear path of policy. That is, we're going to have product standards. We're going to have monitoring and verification. We're going to have a price of carbon that can only climb over time. It's not going to change our behavior today. We're going to have big investment in technology supported by the public sector that's going to be shared in some way. Give us a roadmap. And that's what we really need out of Copenhagen, and that's what I think the forward-looking businesses and business groups have been fighting for. We're going to make one thing.
But the power of lobbyists.
The power industry is the United States. 50% of electricity comes from coal. We will be able to take the stimulus dollars to see the roadmap, to have the certainty, not to create shovel-ready jobs, but to develop high-tech 21st century
Jim, can we just
jobs.
park that for a moment? I just want to pick up and then we can move on. David's particular point about chambers of commerce and so on. Anders.
Yes, lobby group and what Jim said, I think there may be some differences between the US and Europe. A few months back, 60 of the major CEOs from the generators in Europe made a statement that we were ready to make generation, to make power without CO2 in 2050. We were not asked to do that, we did it ourselves. And of course, there was a preconditions that the framework must be in place, but I think the Europeans are in another situation more proactive than what I hear you say.
I can see there's one hand. If you get the microphone, you will speak. So get the microphone to you. Then we won't waste time. But specifically on this issue only of lobby groups dragging back the initiative. Could you say that again?
No, we can't hear a thing.
It's on the wrong channel. The microphone's on the wrong channel. No, we're not hearing it. I tell you what, fix the microphone, and we'll keep talking up here. I think you're on the wrong channel because it's going into my ear as opposed to the auditorium. I'm delighted to hear it. Shy on the business of lobbyists and power there, and that dragging back the initiative.
I think to a certain degree it's the power of the incumbents. If you're a big player and you're emitting a lot, you're also making a ton of money, and so you got a lot of money to spend on lobbyists, and you're funding K Street, and as a result of that, you got a voice. Us tiny guys, we don't have almost no seat at the table. And the fact that we're here, one out of these 5 giants, it's the unusual location for us. And as a result of that, we don't get any representation in any of the agreements. I'll give you an example. If you started by emitting tons and tons and tons of CO2, and then you cut 10% of that, you get a lot of credit. If I start by putting lots of cars on the road that have no CO2, we get 0 credit. Because we started with no cars. So what we need to do is to go buy all the emitting cars and then put our cars on the road so that we can claim that we had credit. On the other hand, if the logic was that we could actually get credit for what we've done and pair up with Jim, and pair up with Anders as we've done here, we can actually solve the problem. When Anders started with 15% renewables, what he's done, he's actually taken a broader perspective and said, we can't just fix coal. We got to fix energy, and we got to fix emissions, and we got to fix uses. And so let's hug transportation and get transportation to 0. There goes 30%, 25% of the emissions. Let's hug heating and get that to 0, and we get 25%. And as he broadens his perspective and partners up with people who come and disrupt other segments, he gets to his resolution, we get the kind of partnership.